Yes, you darling, yeah, you said, come on, but don't understand. Oh, my darling girl, you said you love me twice before. Was it all a lie? Just to give me your bed. I thought you treat me better. I thought you treat me better than that. That you never leave like you promised in the past. That you'd always be there like an angel in the sky. But you had to go on. Oh, you had to go. See me like the sun, the angels singing, birds flying. Mothers dance with daughters, constantly feel. Kisses young as the rain, never see a day of sleep. With families dream, like dogs they are. God, the heavens like the rain. I see the lights that move right now beneath my feet. My eyes they turn to memories of you. It's so hard to laugh. I'm praise that I'm with you. It's so Oh, God help me. Yes, yes, it's just another way. See the case of Eden, no enough for me. Angel call me by my name. Shouldn't be with feathers, fill me up with faith. I can't stop, and I can't stop to thank you for leading me through the dark. You lit my fire, you shone me out of special to you. You found me, found something. But your name for the feeling break your name. Say it, baby, all for the same. Can't be straight. Can't be straight. Can't let this pain right there. The calm down. Stay on. See it. No, I want to say this. I don't want to hurt you, but I need to breathe. At the end of it all, it's friend. But there's nothing so easy. Which way is right? Which way is wrong? You stay and need to know. On my bed, and we are so I'm on my way. You give me more than I can return. Yet there's so much. Nothing, nothing we do. I mean, nothing we do. We can It feels like I am just too close to love. You are my way. So I'll be on 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 my way. It's like oh, it's right now. I wish that I could say I'm sorry. Spinning my face like that, I'm not so sad. Spinning my face like that, spinning my face like that, I'm spinning my face, spinning my face like that, I say it's not that you thought me down, I can't, I'll cut it, okay. I'm touching my day, but you never spinning my face like that, I'll give that to that. You can't see my hand like I say. It's not that you broke me down. I can't, I'll cut it, okay. I'm touching my day, but you never spinning my face like that. I'm supposed to spinning my face like that. It's not that you broke me down. I can't, I'll cut it, okay. I'm touching my day, but you never spinning my face. No, I want process. I don't want to hurt you, but I need to breathe. At the end of it all, don't mind, friend. It feels like I am just too close to love. So I'll be on my way. So I'll be on my way. So I'll be on my way. Severed its contract with Metro Roma in an attempt to wash its hands of the situation. But as the criminal inquiry, here, the problem went far deeper. The investigators discovered that Metro Roma had been working hand in hand with the Transit Authority, ATAC, and together they presided over negligent maintenance and falsified records all across the net. By September 2019, 11 suspects were named, and the courts had
hundreds, if not thousands, of videos of beheaded Palestinian babies and children, Palestinian children with severed limbs killed by Israel. And not a single corporate media has reported on how Israel has systematically beheaded Palestinian children on a daily basis for the last 15 months. And yet, every single one of these Western media outlets was so quick to spread the mass atrocity propaganda in order to manufacture consent for Israel's genocide by repeating a story about an incident which never took place.
We have some really disturbing new information out of Israel. The Israeli Prime Minister's spokesman just confirmed babies and toddlers were found with their heads decapitated.
I choked up earlier reading this new revelation about 40 babies being killed.
Oh my God.
And some of them being beheaded. And I was like, how can any human being do that to a baby?
So what message does that send? That mythical beheaded babies, because they were Israeli, are to be reported on when the incident never happened, but that Palestinian babies and children, when they're beheaded and their limbs are severed and they're found hanging from trees with half of their body missing, that they are not worth the coverage to report on their experience, on their premature death at the hands of Israel and the United States. Did you know that Israeli occupation forces tied explosives to the body of an 80-year-old Palestinian man who was forced to clear booby-trapped houses, and once they released him, they shot and killed him and his wife? Did you know that Israeli soldiers were captured on film raping a Palestinian hostage? And when news of this came to light, Israeli far-right politicians and soldiers and ordinary people protested outside of the facility where the soldier was being held, demanding that he be released. And in parallel, the Israeli Knesset engaged in debates on the right of Israeli soldiers to rape Palestinian hostages.
הטרלול הזה, ויש מי שבפרקליטות חושב שאפשר לבוא ולעצור חיילים על דברים שעושים למחבלי נוח'בה, לא נגמר. אנחנו לא יכולים להמשיך כרגיל.
להכניס מקל לרקטום של בן אדם, זה לגיטימי?
כן, אם הוא נוח'בה, הכל לגיטימי לעשות.
One of the soldiers who was involved in the rape had a media tour all around Israeli media stations and took off his ski mask and was revered as a national hero by members of Israeli society. Did you know that a young Palestinian boy by the name of Saddam Rajab was killed in the occupied West Bank after an Israeli occupation soldier shot him in the stomach? Even though the evidence is right there, was still responded to by supporters of Israel as being fake or being what they call Hollywood, because not only does Israel kill Palestinians with impunity, but Israel's supporters to believe that their ideology is morally justified when they do see images of Israel's policies against Palestinians. They just claim that they're fake, that they didn't happen, that they're made up entirely by Palestinians to claim global sympathy. Did you know that Israeli occupation forces recently killed a 2-year-old Palestinian girl by the name of Leila Khatib, who was sitting down to eat dinner with...
On the morning of January 5th, 1996, a phone rang in a quiet house at Beit Lahia, a small city in the Gaza Strip. Yahya Ayeshe, also known as the engineer, picked up.
How are you, father?
In an instant, half his face was ripped from his body. The murder weapon? Cell phone rigged with explosives by Israel's most feared intelligence agency, Mossad. Yahya Ayeshe, or the engineer, was the man behind a string of unalived bombings that brought terror to Israel's streets. Born in the West Bank, Yahya Ayeshe was a prodigy. As a child, he had spent time fixing up old radios and TVs. Everyone around him saw his talent for engineering, but no one knew he would one day use it to build something far more deadly. After earning his electrical engineering degree, Yahya applied for a master's program in Jordan. But when his visa was denied, his life took a different turn. Instead of looking for alternatives to keep studying, he decided to join Hamas. And to Hamas, Yahya Ayeshe was a gift. He taught them how to make bombs from nothing. Not C4, not from hard-to-find military components, but from regular everyday household items. Detergent, acetone, sugar, the kind of stuff no security checkpoint could stop. And he would process them into an explosive so deadly that it was called the Mother of Satan. And in just a few short years, Yahya Ayeshe became Hamas's deadliest assets. time the engineer turned 29, he was already responsible for the death of over 150 people. Mossad wanted to take him out, but that was not going to be easy. Israeli intelligence had spent years on his track, but he managed to slip through their fingers every single time. When the West Bank eventually got too dangerous for him, he was smuggled to Gaza so Mossad followed. There was no way they were going to let him escape this time. Yahya knew he had to be careful, so whenever he wasn't in his friend Osama's house, he would dress up as a woman in a burqa, completely covering his face, with a rifle hidden underneath his dress just in case. But as any intelligence officer knows all too well, comfort is the enemy of survival. And soon enough, Yahya became a little too comfortable. He started following a routine. He relaxed. And that's when Mossad found their way in. They discovered that Yahya was staying at his friend Osama Hamad's house. Now all they needed was a way in. That way in turned out to be Osama's uncle. Osama's uncle was just the kind of man Mossad needed for the job. A man with loyalty to just one thing, money. For the right price and US visas for his family, he gave Mossad exactly what they needed, one of his nephew's phones. He knew Yahya didn't own a phone himself, so when he borrowed one of Osama's. Maybe the uncle thought Mossad was just wiretapping his phone. Either way, he handed over the phone, took his reward, and disappeared. And then Mossad got to work. It's 6:30 a.m. in Beit Lahia, Gaza. The engineer finally allows himself to sleep, and next to him, lying on a small table, was Osama's Motorola phone. On the surface, nothing about the phone seemed suspicious. It looked normal, it felt normal. But in reality, Mossad had already gotten in there and worked their magic. Inside the phone, they had planted about 50 grams of RDX, a powerful explosive that they could detonate remotely. They had molded and hidden the explosive so well that not even the engineer, a man who lived and breathed bombs, noticed. With the murder weapon hiding in plain sight, all Mossad had to do was wait. At around 8 a.m., the phone finally rang. The engineer was awakened from his sleep by the sound, but his friend Osama got there before him. Quietly, he handed the engineer the phone. "It's your father." And without a second thought, the engineer held the phone to his right ear. "How are you, father?" Those were his final words. The explosion is small and precise. It rips through the right side of the engineer's skull with surgical accuracy, killing him instantly. It was so accurate that his left side remains completely untouched, and Osama, standing right next to him, walks away without a scratch. As the sound of the explosion rang through the street, chaos followed. Neighbors ran over to the house to see what happened. People walking by on the street stopped in their tracks, but it's far too late to do anything about it. Inside Osama's house, Yahya's body lay lifeless on the floor, his right hand still gripping the phone that killed him. And if Mossad is capable of such precise assassinations like this, assassinations that don't harm any innocent bystanders, then they should really question why they're doing this. So to see just how capable they are of not causing collateral damage, let's explore just how good Mossad is at committing assassinations. Stay dangerous, and let's get into this. Just like in covert ops, if you want success in your e-commerce business, you need one thing: efficiency. And that is where ShipStation comes in, today's sponsor. And with up to 80 completely first link below. Seemingly out of nowhere, the convoy, this was as deep into enemy territory as was. It's 3 p.m. in the town of Oaks, evening. This was as deep into enemy territory as Mossad could hope to get. And just like the engineer, they were here for one thing. Seemingly out of nowhere, the convoy of first here on 25 streets. Inside one of the black sedans that Iran's nuclear granddad, Iran's very unpopular. The guy behind their entire nuclear weapons program, and probably the guy with the biggest Mossad-shaped target on his back. Mossad Fakhrizadeh was his name, and he's been under Mossad's surveillance for decades. But here's the thing, unlike the engineer, he had an entire country to disappear. He had the entire government's pocketbook at his disposal. He even had his own bodyguards protecting him and his wife at all times. So getting to him would be a lot harder than just breaking himself. Mossad had tried to fit the track in the floor. They had got the thousands of plans to get rid of him. But Mossad was always Winston. Obviously, they needed a new approach. They needed to think a lot bigger. And by late 2019, they had finally set their plan into motion. See, just like the engineer was in that fallen prey to routine, he had gotten into the habit of visiting one of his homes in Upstart Friday. And that routine, him driving with his wife from Tehran to Upstart every Friday afternoon, made him. It's 3:10 p.m. Mossad's car continues moving down a long, winding road
through the dusty countryside of Mossad. But he doesn't know that he's about to drive into a trap in years in the making. See, Mossad knew that they couldn't just send any old Hezbollah out there. It was too risky, and there was too big of a chance that they would get caught. The Mossad airstrikes, on the other hand, were reliable. They could easily miss their targets. If they wanted to be successful, they would have to pull us off with 0 points on the ground and 100% accuracy. So that's exactly what they did. Just a few hundred meters down the road from Mossad's cover, a truck was parked inconspicuously near the side of the road. On the surface, it looked totally normal, just like any other construction vehicle with a flat tire or an empty gas tank. But this was not just any old truck. It was planted there by Mossad. And it was their ticket to finally getting rid of Mossad for good. In the back of the truck, completely camouflaged by construction material, was one of the most futuristic weapons Mossad had ever used. A 1-ton AI-controlled satellite-operated machine gun aimed directly at the oncoming cars. Mossad agents had assembled the gun piece by piece over almost a year. They had programmed the AI to recognize Mossad and then fire at him with the precision of a sniper, while they watched the safety of the country. By the time Mossad's car was driving down the road in Absar, the Mossad agents from both ran. They were thousands of miles away, watching the entire thing on screen. As the convoy got closer and closer, the mechanism controlling the gun suddenly powered on. This would be Mossad's one shot at taking out its most wanted enemy. And without any input from a human or any sort of authorization, the AI scanned the faces of the people in the approaching cars, and right at the moment Mossad's car slowed down to go with its speed up, that's when the gun fired. British shot punched the first measurement and Mossad in the chest. His wife sitting next to him didn't even realize what happened until seconds later. Immediately, Mossad lost control of the car and swerved. Within seconds, he was gone. And then less than 3 minutes after the attack began, the truck with the machine gun was also gone. As soon as it fired the last shot, the entire truck exploded, taking any trace of evidence with it. At 3:12 p.m., Mossad's car was abandoned by the side of the road, blood covering the ground where he tried calling out to safety. The granddaddy Marquez knew the gun was dead, assassinated in broad daylight without a human even needing to pull the trigger. No fingerprints, no evidence, no trace of who exactly was responsible. It was as close to a perfect kill as anyone could imagine. It would take a run once they even proved Mossad was behind it, and even a longer-term dive remote-controlled machine gun that what no Israeli agent would have ever been able to do. It was yet another huge win for Mossad. But even though Mossad had a lot to celebrate, they were not done yet. These two assassinations were just valuable practice runs, leading up to the most daring operation yet. Xu Jingfang is an entrepreneur in Thailand, as hailed as the guy that brought back the whole electronic pager. His company Golden Pulse sold their pages to governments around the world, from the Dutch to the FBI. But in 2021, he got approved with something different. The company's woman came to him, and she said that she knew a Teresa who worked for a Hungarian-based company called BAC Consulting, and that BAC Consulting wanted to buy his pagers. And so naturally, he started selling his pagers to this Hungarian company. But after a year, this Hungarian company came back to Holland with a strange request. They wanted to design their own pagers, but with this company's trademark. It was strange, but he agreed. And even their payments to him were strange. BAC was supposed to be a Hungarian company, but their payments for the pages came from a bank in the Middle East. And for a while, Xu Jingfang just brushed it off. Till September 2024. It was a peaceful morning in 7-Eleven. Some people were shopping, some were sitting in grocery store lines, some were sitting at home with their kids, some were on their way to work. I see completely normal till the first explosion. Seemingly at the exact same time, hundreds of pages from across Lebanon and Syria exploded. Caught fire without function and exploded, but the engineer exploded. Within just a few minutes, 37 people were dead and over 3,000 people were injured. Panic set in for the soldiers that something was like, but it wasn't yet. Because the very next day was the 24 hours later, and the ripples were explosions again. This time, it was two-way radios. Unlike Pager's walkie-talkies, space for explosives, making the explosions even bigger and deadlier. Thousands of people were killed and injured, and no one could understand why. Back in Taiwan, police and reporters keep rushing the question of Golden Pulse Xu Jingfang, made that his pagers were the ones used in the attack. And in that moment, it all made sense. He realized that those pagers used in the attack did have his company's name on it, but they weren't entirely different from his designs, and that they also had a completely different computer chip that
ideas could be didn't use. And that BAC consulting was nothing but it was. As journalists look at it, they discovered that to the country's most recent annual reports from the Hungarian Ministry of Justice, the company only had about $320. It was as clear as day would have. So I created a fake for a company using this. They said it was like photos of years. They most likely replaced one of the two batteries in the pager with an explosive device, and then they somehow sold these explosive pages to Hezbollah and was not the wise. Then they, even though they could have detonated them years ago at any time they wanted, they waited for the perfect opportunity. And after October 7th, that opportunity finally came. Just like waking up sleeper agents, the explosives in the pages and walkie-talkies were detonated completely remotely. No group of assassins or elaborate operations, just the push of a button, killing dozens or injuring thousands of people in a matter of seconds. That's how far Muslim had come. From breaking an old school cell phone with explosives, to building an AI controlled machine gun, to taking out dozens of its targets with one little push of the button. So as you can see, Mossad has gotten pretty good at this nation. They might have even gotten more sophisticated at it than what America is capable of. So we're left with the question that we will this video. If they're fully capable of taking out targets with surgical precision with no civilian casualties, then can we really believe that this was necessary? Mossad has executed some of the most audacious spy missions in the earth, going deep under government territory, catching terror masterminds and duping technologies into buying rigged electronics to their groups so loud no one suspects the thing to explode. If the Mossad waits until terrorists feel safe, then it reminds them that they aren't weird. So go. Don't you know that? Right. With the main actors, not the president. So now, they think it's supposed to be sometimes. Successful spots. Maybe strategies that gatherings. It can take months, right? Years. This spy can wait over a decade for death. Then the target police expects it. Mossad sends a little message. Watch. Fading. It's no escape. No damage. Not even ghost. Even my name's alive. I believe he's a ghost. He always been extreme as a teenager able to control the savage evil. But it regulations. That needs suitable position. That's related to as the claim of Thank you for calling in for Reservation Service. We are open daily from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. We are currently not accepting tariff orders, but you are able to order online directly at reservation.com or through your favorite third party. If you have any questions or concerns, you can leave us a message. Thank you and have an excellent day.
Hi, I just got a notification that my order is ready to be picked up, but I didn't order anything. I was just wondering if it, like, what that is from. Thank you.
His reach extended beyond his turban. The target Israelis and Jews who Israel Israel had to identify him for over 20 years. It was spy agency protection. And it was deployed some creative strategies that could assassinate the son waited for him. But what it was too practical. His brother was very son to be out.
was a ghost. Until still in Naples, 2004, Israel took out Taliban. Senior has no command in a to show of sentence, as well as propaganda. Bad, because the Mossad had their hands on video, analyzing every free information. They didn't expect to spot close. Here he was, standing next to his most data. Information. It was the first in decades. Israel. And they knew that if he was able to supply this, how would they get to? As they conquered ways to reach the Mossad, they hacked into the Iranian government system, which kept files to make access. And that's assets of yours since 2006. It was the breakthrough. So, because Syria was a Turkic country, and then state undercover operations are especially dangerous, organizing an assassination attempt instead of troops in Syria. But Syrian security was vigilant and sophisticated, and everyone knew what they do to the spot. It was too risky for Israeli agents to make the troops into Damascus. So, Assad did simply it asked the Americans for help. The CIA has a strict policy not making countries. Time. Syria and the US had diplomatic relations. They could just carry out assassination on Syrian soil. Turns out they could. The US had their own reasons for wanting to go, including sending men to Iraq to carry out strikes against American troops. So the CIA went down under two conditions. One, the Israelis could target the that meant that if anyone else was in the same operation, so two, US agents would go provide. The Israeli security were exorcists. As American agents did, they found the highest pay. Syrian security services had supplied the military to guys, special forces. You tried to see them so supplies and gaps in security for someone who was other to a sense of state danger. Because Mulder was no dummy and he was too. And he and his bodyguards were careful to check off dead neighbors inside his car. But they did admit to check. He told him the spare tire back slick some SUV. This was it. If the Mossad could get some kind of acid to it, Mulder was going down. For months, Mulder had a day watching it waiting for the break out of his car was attendant. One night, Mulder was getting cozy with his lady. Mossad agents swooped in. They exchanged his tire cover and she had a special device that would enable him by causing any casualties. The weapon was right. Now, they just needed everything else. The beast, Mossad operators were in action. They almost detonated the charge of 32 times, stopping at the last minute when he got too quickly. When he got too close to the person, they didn't forget their CIA. The target was Bolivia. The third time was the chair. I'm sure they found him. They left the meeting with Syrian intelligence and other harassment officers. But this was it. As he drew closer to his goal, the agents detonated. For 30 years, they got pushed. This wasn't Israel's first time executing a daring mission. Territory. They'd done it before. They'd do it again. Themselves scientists. Looking is the so-called playground. It's home to some high one skyscrapers. Christine took voice waters in Persian Gulf. It's also where some of Earth's most notorious militants and business. Shmuel El-Yaakov was one of these militants. Israel had wanted him for 2 decades, ever since the 80s, when he and an accomplice had kidnapped 2 Israeli soldiers. Shmuel was cold as ice. He admitted that his only regret was that he had shot himself. 20 years later, Shmuel was coordinating weapon shipments for Hamas, playing the network that moved to the Gaza Strip. Weapons that Hamas used to attack Israelis sophisticated. Seconds later, a wave of explosions sounded across the. It was a shock. Israel wasn't done yet. A few days later, they activated the Watertown. 10 years of waiting. Hundreds of Hezbollah's fighters were taken out of action. The communications network was shattered. And in one of the biggest blows to the terror organization, Israel came as Hezbollah's weakness to violently assassinate its elusive leader. It was the slavery of spy tropes. So likely it seems impossible. That's the besides I mean. After it made down, after thinking, said Fox, after she their least expected. Not every mission succeeds. And they do. They remind Israel's enemies that chose back. And the South is always watching. Looking over to the entire nation. His car was unattended. What got the first teacher post waters, the first week. It's also some Earth's most notorious militants kept up business. Was one of these militants. Israel had wanted him for 2 decades, ever since the 80s, when he and an accomplice had needed 2 Israeli soldiers. He was cold as ice. He admitted that his only regret was that he had shot me. 20 years later, locals already would have been showing his fleeing us. Bringing the network to the Gaza Strip. But if the Hamas used to attack Israelis, it's time to get ready for the question. Where and how? I spent a lot of time in countries like Syria, China, Sudan. Not exactly Israel's buddies, but it was a frequent flyer to another destination. 2009, that Iranian government was not too friendly to this week. I was risky. It was the best of bad options. Tons of voters passed through the network, which meant some operatives were easily used as tourists. And Dubai security wasn't as sophisticated as Iran's or Syria's. These race figured that no investigation of state in 2009 saw the its habits. They entered the UAE using false identities and passports. Passports that in some cases are they had no idea they were under the law. A few months later, they broke out the same foreign passports and returned to Dubai. This time to eliminate poison. The mission was a failure. All the poison ended up doing was making him feel a little unwell. The good news was that he never realized it was the Israelis that were the source of his illness. Bad news was that he was still at large. So I was determined that next time they tried to eliminate him, nothing would go wrong. So in January 2010, Israel's Hezbollah landed in Dubai for the 3rd time, using the same 4 names and passports as before. Mistake number 2, Hezbollah wasn't sure where he would stay, so they broke into small teams and checked into different hotels. Some being cashed, other agents paid debit cards issued by one specific company. Company was run by an Israeli. Mistake number 3, because the team was scattered around the city, they had to communicate with each other in real time. So they used cell phones, but cell phones are very easy to track, so they didn't call each other directly. Instead, the agents called the central switchboard on the street to connect them to each other. Mistake number 4, any well-trained spy was the pair of successful training, switching their look, wigs, different hats, glasses, and a costume too. The hit squad had this taken down the alley. They gave their disguises. Some of those was tennis players. One guy even entered a basketball as a cute, left him and blue shoes in. But even if they could evade the attention of other people, there were sound eyes watching them. Dubai's hotels were absolutely jammed full of security cameras. Cameras that saw and recorded everything. Mistake number 5. Just 6 hours after he landed in Dubai, the hit squad broke into his hotel room. It took 20 minutes to accomplish the mission. After locking the room from the inside, the hit squad hightailed it out to the fronts. Would lay in bed for the local heart attack. First, local security officers found they had just stumbled on random tourists who had the misfortune to be on vacation. The authorities didn't know it was Hamas's weapons. They only knew the false name John. His body went to the morgue and nobody found him again. Until Hamas started to get suspicious. So when he stopped picking up his phone, they knew something was off. Their agents searched police stations and homes until they found him. Now, the Dubai authorities were looking for a nasty surprise. Not a random tourist, actually a tourist. Some Dubai security services for years. Hamas were using Dubai as a base for illegal activity. And the Mossad just assassinates city. They scour assholes. For many, travel to Dubai at the same time as home. A series of foreign names kept appearing and reappearing. Authorities cross-checked these names against hotel guests. Those silent eyes, team camera security cameras, gave them another piece of the puzzle. The faces of the agents. The names of the agents at hand. Investigators looked at data. A lot of them. They were like deck cards that were traced back to a
Oh, I am live on Twitch. What the hell?
seriously
Said I wasn't live on Twitch.
information.
Well, hello.
Actually, honest, the investigator was able to cobble together all the security force to retrace the footsteps of the hits almost to the minute. This rainy Sabbath wasn't going to win any Oscars, but the evidence was near few. Was the and there was some who used real passports and forged them. The countries involved simply bad. They felt manipulated. Israel couldn't afford to alienate their allies. The diplomatic fallout for this episode was intense. France condemns this assassination. Murder is no way to carry out international relations. The Dubai passports themselves also constitutes a clear and direct breach of confidential undertakings between Australia and Israel, dating back some years. The mission was a success. They eliminated all temporarily interrupting Hamas's flow of weapons. But the operation was a bust. The Mossad burned a number of agents and exposed its tradecraft secrets, which were sophisticated to begin with. It was a mortifying because Israel learned a lot about what not to do. And though it took over a decade, they eventually put those lessons to good use. Remember this video from June 2024? I'm not a betting guy, but I'm willing to put money on the fact that over the next 100 years, Israeli secret agents are going to go on some pretty wild missions. After all, the Israeli government is bound to take down every single person to the attack of 2007. Turns out that was a pretty safe bet. Here's the story of how a broken air mission was Israel's operation to get rid of a top October 7th master. Ismail Haniyeh had been involved with Hamas, graduated person. By the time the terror wrested control of the Gaza Strip in a bloody coup, he was in charge. For a decade, he ruled Hamas with an iron fist. By 2017, he traded the Gaza Strip for Qatar, one of the richest countries in the Middle East. As billions of Gazans he eventually back $4 billion. Believe it, right? As Haniyeh was enjoying a good life in Qatar, Qatar has hosted Hamas leadership since 2012, at the request of the United States, which wanted an easier way to talk to the terror. Israel agreed to respect this. That meant attacking any Hamas operators on Qatari soil absolutely out of question. And Israel was not about to repeat Dubai debacle and risk alienating its most important ally, the United States. If they were going to get Haniyeh, they'd have to wait for him to leave Qatar. The problem was, Haniyeh spent most of his time in Turkey, Russia, and the Islamic Republic, highly dangerous countries for Israeli operators. But when he was visiting Iran, Haniyeh wasn't exactly couch surfing. He stayed in one of Tehran's most heavily guarded hotels, the guest house of the Islamic Republic's notorious military, IRGC. The IRGC is powerful, dangerous, and sophisticated. Even they weren't immune to Israel's trade craft. In May 2024, an unexpected event sparked one of Mossad's most ambitious assassinations. On a cool spring day, Ibrahim Raisi's helicopter unexpectedly crashed into a over Palestine. No one in Israel, or most of Iran, was shedding any tears over Raisi. He was a monster responsible for executing several thousand political prisoners in Iran. In a way, Israel realized they had their goal to go to. The helicopter crash meant Iran would hold the state deal. Shortly thereafter, the inauguration of a new president, and as a key figure in Iran's terror proxy network, Ismail Haniyeh would undoubtedly attend both events, which left Israel with just weeks to plan the assassination that would finally take Haniyeh out. Someone working for the Israelis smuggled a device to the IRGC guest house, carefully positioned in Israel. Some news reports say the device was placed soon after Raisi's crash, while others claim it was placed later, just moments before the don't know who you or when, but we do know this. As the inauguration festivities wound down, and Hania made his way back to his room, a team of agents was waiting on tenterhooks for go time. Then, Hank zeroed it out. July in the East is hot. Even the bad guys need to stay cool. So when Hania left to get his air conditioner fixed, the team feared he was switching rooms. Twist of fate, which would have led to a very different ending to this. But after a while, he came back. But he didn't have long to enjoy the agreement. Because in the early hours of July 31st, 2024, a shook some guest house. The man that masterminded the TS7 attacks, the man responsible for tens of thousands of deaths, was finally far from over. Since that horrific day, Israel had multiple fronts. At first, they focused on Hamas. But as Hezbollah rockets rained down Israel's communities, driving 60,000 Israelis from their homes, it was clear that the situation couldn't continue. It was time to take down Hezbollah. Back in 2014, Taylor Swift had just dropped her hit single, Shake It Up. Russia was hosting the Winter Olympics. In Israel, usually known for its high-tech, was in the business of making clunky walkie-talkies for a special customer. That customer was Hezbollah, who were in the market for walkie-talkies for their fighters. They're the perfect method of communication on a battlefield. Instant and secure. So Israel seized on the opportunity. The plan was simple. Copy a popular Japanese design Hezbollah liked, place some of the battery components with tiny blast devices, and convince Hezbollah to buy them. Easy peasy. Using a complex network of shell companies, Israel sold 16,000 walkie-talkies to Hezbollah operatives. Then, for 10 years, they sat back and waited. Like KGB sleeper spies from the Cold War, the walkie-talkies seemed innocent. In reality, they were deadly weapons ready to activate at a moment's notice. Fast forward a few years, a female Mossad agent had a bright idea. Why not do the same with pagers? Make some unassuming-looking pagers, and voila! You have a handheld, remote-controlled exploding device. Pagers are the dinosaurs of communication devices. For the most part, they're a museum piece. But for a terror group like Hezbollah, pagers had a lot of appeal. Pagers don't have much function other than receiving a message. But their limited utility also means that they can't be electronically hacked. Perfect for a group that doesn't want to be tracked. Initially, the Mossad said, not enough people in Hezbollah were using pagers to warrant the effort it would take to make and distribute them. But over time, Hezbollah's higher-ups were getting antsy about using cell phones, which could be hacked and tracked. It was too big a risk. So Israel jumped. They even got a team to flood Arab social media with fake news about Israel's amazing ability to hack cell phones, jumping Hezbollah into looking for more secure alternatives, like pagers. The Mossad knew that Hezbollah would be suspicious of new technology companies trying to sell them products, so Israel had to work within their existing supplier system. But the suppliers couldn't know either. Everything had to seem above board, which meant Mossad had to go deep. Hezbollah got its devices from a Taiwanese technology company. So Israel set up a shell company based in Budapest, which bought a licensing agreement from Gold Apollo to manufacture a new line of beepers. This new product line was bigger, more rugged, more durable. And it came with a little surprise embedded in the battery. Israeli engineers spent months testing and tweaking the pagers, which were designed to maim rather than kill. The blast radius was tiny. Only the person carrying the beeper would be injured. It was the most targeted attack the world had ever seen. The Mossad left nothing to chance. They tested which ringtones would be most compelling and how long it would take for someone to check their beeper being paged. To convince Hezbollah that the pagers were a worthwhile investment, Israel tapped again into the power of social media, creating slick ads that played on YouTube. Even legitimate customers were interested, but the Israelis dissuaded them by quoting absurdly high prices. Of course, these customers had no idea they were really talking to the Mossad. Meanwhile, the sales team made Hezbollah an offer they couldn't refuse. The first batch of beepers were free, and they'd offer a discount if they bought in bulk. Hezbollah fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. By the fall of 2023, they'd handed out thousands of pagers to their operatives. But Israel was on borrowed time. One of Hezbollah's top technicians was starting to get suspicious that the walkie-talkies Hezbollah had bought 10 years earlier might actually be incendiary devices. He was asking one too many questions. So Israel shut him down permanently with an airstrike. And in mid-September 2024, the now or never moment came. Israel's military intelligence learned that Hezbollah had asked Iran to examine the pagers, worried they might contain explosives. It was time to act. 5 days later, in the middle of the afternoon, an encrypted message went out to the rigged pagers, triggering the hidden detonators. Seconds later, a wave of explosions sounded all across Lebanon. The country was in shock. Israel wasn't done yet. A few days later, they activated the walkie-talkies. 10 years of waiting were over. Hundreds of Hezbollah's fighters were taken out of action. Their communications network was shattered. And in one of the biggest blows to the terror organization, Israel capitalized on Hezbollah's weakness to finally assassinate its elusive leader, Hassan Nasrallah. It was the stuff of spy thrillers. So unlikely, it seems impossible. But that's the Mossad's MO. They have to remain adaptable. They have to think outside the box. They have to strike when they're least expected. Not every mission succeeds. When they do, they remind Israel's enemies that Jews fight back, and that the Mossad is always watching, working overtime to protect their tiny nation. For most of the past century, Israelis and Palestinians have been sworn enemies, locked in a seemingly endless war. From the outside, the battlefield seems black and white, two opposing sides facing off, with zero common ground. But zooming closer, an unexpected front emerges, because between Israelis and Palestinians is a third group. These are the Arab citizens of Israel, who live at the foot in two opposing worlds, caught in a high wire act over a field of landmines, deeply aware that both sides are scrutinizing their every move. They can't really be Israeli and Palestinian at the same time. Israel is the Jewish state, and it's also defined by its vibrant, chaotic mashup of different cultures and religions. Plenty of Israeli Jews grew up with Arabic in the home. I grew up watching my grandpa speak Arabic with friends from Jaffa and Abu Ghosh. When I was a kid, this seemed totally unremarkable. A fifth of the country is Arab, after all. At the end of the day, we were all Israelis. And then I grew up and learned that things are a little more complicated. Right across the de facto borders that separate Israel from the West Bank and Gaza were millions of Palestinians, many related by blood to the Arabs I knew in Israel. And though lots of people have hyphenated identities, things get complicated when the identities on either side of that hyphen are at war with one another. For many of the 2.1 million Arab citizens of Israel, the war is deeply personal. And as a Jewish Israeli who believes in the promises of a multicultural society, I wanted to know how Arab citizens navigate their paradoxical identities. So I turned to my friend Ibrahim Abu Ahmed, peace activist, who has been wrestling with this question for a long time. We met in his hometown of Nazareth, aka the Arab capital of Israel, the perfect place to untangle the question of what it means to be an Arab citizen of Israel. Nazareth has a long history, and in this region, history tends to dictate pretty much everything. For example, which side of the border you live on.
I guess it's a good time to say welcome to Nazareth.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for
Excited to be here.
My family is originally from Nazareth. They've been in generations. Actually, the story of Nazareth also is connected to
Flamenco celebration at 2018, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the popular Puerto Rican congresswoman from New York, surprised a small crowd by announcing that she has Jewish ancestry.
My family consisted of Sephardic Jews.
Later that same week, a groundbreaking study came out of Latin America. After testing DNA samples from 6,000 randomly selected people across the region, researchers found that 23% of them had at least 5% of their DNA from Spanish Jewish heritage. Back in 2015, the Spanish government announced that they'd grant citizenship to any non-Spaniards who could prove that they are descendants of Jews who were expelled from the country in the 15th century. By late 2019, Spain revealed that they'd received 127,000 applications. The most popular countries? Mexico, Venezuela, and Colombia. All this points to one big question. Why do so many Latin Americans have Jewish heritage? To understand 1402. Two huge historical events took place that year, and both had serious lasting consequences. First, Spain started to colonize the Americas. And second, back on their side of the Atlantic, the Spanish government enacted the Alhambra Decree, which forced Jews to either convert to Catholicism or leave the country for good. Spain had already been murdering or forcibly converting Jews for over a century. That was part of the Spanish Inquisition. But this was the final nail in the coffin. Now, Jews had only two options: get baptized.
It seems like in Israel after October 7th, saying you believe in peace is like saying you believe in aliens. But it hasn't always been this way. In the 90s, massive crowds lined the streets of Tel Aviv, celebrating a new era of peace. Israeli and Palestinian leaders signed historic agreements, shook hands, even shared a Nobel Prize. But the promise of peace never materialized. Every negotiation since is blown up in our faces, sometimes literally. Today, 2/3 of Israelis believe that peace with the Palestinians is impossible. So, are they right? Is the Israeli-Palestinian peace process doomed? I'm gonna level with you. This is one of the hardest videos I've ever done. Because on the one hand, I'm kind of a peace activist myself.
We agree on a lot, obviously, as we've grown closer as friends and this.
I truly believe that peace between Israelis and Palestinians is possible. It's an article of faith for me, a prophetic aspiration that I know will come true. But prophetic aspirations don't follow a human timeline. Sometimes it's hard to believe that peace will come in my lifetime. For maybe working towards it. My darkest moments, where the things will get much worse before they get better. I was 19 years old when I returned here, just in time for the wave of stabbings. Palestinian youth crowd the streets with kitchen knives and screwdrivers, looking for a victim to bear the brunt of their hopelessness and rage. Many never returned from their parent, taken out by soldiers or bystanders. It was a grim world, but I knew firsthand that it didn't have to be that way. I had grown up watching my grandfather model coexistence in a Jewish state. He lived his life in both Hebrew and Arabic, building a home that was open to everything. That was the world I wanted for myself. I knew it was possible. I just didn't know how.
Democracy might be mathematically impossible. This isn't a value judgment meant about human nature, statement about how rare and unstable democratic societies have been in the history of civilization. Our current attempt at democracy, the methods we're using to elect our leaders, are fundamentally irrational. And this is a well-established mathematical fact. This is a video about the math that proved that fact led to an. Good evening, everybody. You are watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. I am joining you tonight under some very dark circumstances. I'd like to say we got a great show for you tonight. I think it's going to be an excellent show, but of course, the news is unbelievably tragic. Tonight, as you know, we're gathered here. We're going to talk tonight about the death of Charlie Kirk. And even saying that out loud are still very surreal and disturbing. I said this last night and I meant it as I watched the chaos, the tragedy unfold yesterday afternoon. And I know everybody else feels exactly the same way. It didn't feel real. That's the characterization I keep seeing from everybody on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter. People have been profoundly affected by this, and we're not sure why. And hopefully, we can talk a little bit about maybe why that is. As I said yesterday, like many of you, I got the alert from a friend of mine. I believe was either at the event or had friends at the event. And if you in Utah, a friend of mine texted me and said, Charlie has been shot. I said, Charlie Kirk. They said, yes. And watched it unfold live. We're still getting updates. We don't know exactly what transpired. And again, we'll get into some of that as well. Some of the uncertainties and unanswered questions. But I am devastated and legitimately affected and struck viscerally. Such a sensational video, images, such an unspeakable the tragedy, and I literally had to take a day to collect myself. This is a current event show. I'm live every night, and I discuss the news of the day, and I've been there through many of the big developments over the years. Same day, January 6th, Trump assassination attempt, the elections, the pandemic. But this one was different. And I think everybody feels that way about it. It felt like a nightmare. But that's the only way that I could accurately describe it, actually. Throughout the entire day yesterday, I just could not process it. It did not sink in. It still hasn't fully sunk in. Like I said earlier, you say those words, the death of Charlie Kirk, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I watched his Wikipedia page go from Charlie Kirk is to Charlie Kirk was. It doesn't feel real. It feels like a nightmare that we'll never wake up from. And I say that as somebody who was not even a fan, not a friend, and actually an adversary, a foe. I can only imagine when his friends, his colleagues, and especially his wife, his young children, you can only imagine what they're going through. And so what happened yesterday is still so raw and so sensitive that the country is affected, at least it is. We'll talk about that too. And so tonight I'm going to try to the best of my ability, carry out my responsibility. I believe, and I think you know, that I'm somebody that many of the young people, young conservatives are looking up to. I have a lot of credibility with the far right, the radical right. And throughout his career, Charlie Kirk always characterized me as a troll. I don't say that with any malice at this point in time, but that's what he said. And many at Turning Point USA said that I and my followers are nihilistic. We only want destruction. And I think that I have an obligation to the country. I think I have an obligation to God. I think I have an obligation to all of you. I think I have responsibility to prove that that is not true. It's not about me. But now that it is the morning after, the day has dawned where Charlie Kirk is now dead at the hands of some unknown attacker. It is our responsibility, mine and all of ours, to step up and to get serious. To the extent that politics was fun or we took it lightly, I think we now realize it just got very real. It's been real. People talk about a civil war. They say war is coming. Some say we're already in. We have an obligation now. The leaders, the spokesmen, the men, the young men, the elderly men, we have an obligation to lead. And I want to start, before we get into any of it, by saying this, just as a general note. I've been around now for 7 or 8 years. That's not a very long time, but it's long enough. I've lived through a lot of these events, Charlottesville, January 6th, the Detroit War, many things. And I know that in my career, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've done things I regret, said things I regret. I've made a lot of the same mistakes twice. And I've been lucky because I've lived and I have this platform and I'm able to speak to all of you in spite of that. And I think maybe one of the reasons why is because I have been afforded the opportunity to learn a lot. Having been in the center of dissident right-wing politics, far-right politics, in the center of this cultural movement, whatever you want to call it, as an archetypal disaffected young white man, angry young white man, Trump supporter, however you want to characterize that. I've been in the thick of it for a very long time. And seeing many crises and tragedies and things that we cannot explain, things that are difficult to cope with. I will say first, as I said, as a general note, before we move on, it cannot be overstated how important it is in a time like this to put our intentions in alignment with the will of God. Everybody's very emotional. Everybody is whipped up, and rightfully so, justifiably so. People are furious. I don't know that the left fully understands that. I don't know that normies fully understand that. People are absolutely beside themselves. I've never seen the right wing more angry, more furious, and this has been building. Here we are today, the day after Charlie Kirk has been killed. We're starting here in the middle of the story. It's been going on for decades. And these things compound over time and they accumulate. And I, like everybody else, recognize that this could potentially be a watershed moment. This is a ripple effect. We may look back in time and see a chain reaction, an inexorable chain reaction that leads to nothing other than destruction, devastation, bloodshed, misery. I don't think it's crazy to say billions of dead bodies. And we must have the prudence. We must have the confidence in our convictions, in our faith in God. This is the test. It's easy to believe in prayer when things are easy. It's easy to believe in God, mercy, forgiveness, temperance when things are easy. It's when things are hard, when they're confusing, when we feel justifiably angry, wrathful, prideful. That's the test. That's when it counts. And that is when mature people, and I recognize the folly in me saying that. I don't consider myself an extremely mature person. I think I'm a frivolous person in many ways. But it's an obligation for all of us to grow up now and recognize the gravity of the situation we're in, the peril that we're all in. And we have to ask ourselves, what are our intentions? We have to set them intentionally. We have to set them in alignment with God, with the gospel. We have to think not just about the present moment and what we're feeling, but about the long term, the good of our country, the good of our fellow countrymen, both the people we agree with and disagree with, our children, our progeny. And we have to think about that moment before God. We have to think about our moment before God in judgment. And we're asked about that golden. We don't save ourselves. We approach God with humility. We approach the judgment as weak, as mortal. Before we take up arms, before we relish in our anger and sit with it, sit with our rage and resentment and feel it, and get into these loops, feedback loops. I think it is so important. And this is why I said last night I wasn't going to do a show. I really meant it. And I think everybody needed one night at least to sleep on this, to pray, and to pray not just for the repose of Charlie Kirk's soul, and for his wife, and for his 2 young children, and for the people affected in his organization, and for the people to pray for the wisdom, the strength, the prudence, the humility, fortitude, to approach this in the right way. Because how we respond to this tragedy, like all of these events, like all of the persecution, all of the suffering, the anguish, it will define us. It will define our future. It is life or death here. And what I imagine at the very outset of this, at the end, is caution. Let us not be hasty. If you're thinking of picking up arms, put them down. And if you can't be convinced altogether, put them down today. Put them down tomorrow. Let us be cautious. Let us be prudent. Let's think. Let's get right. Let's get right with God before we act hastily. And the reason I say that I have come to this reaction over many years, seeing many crises, is because not only is there a spiritual dimension to all of this, and the devil uses our emotions against us, uses our best intentions, our best inclinations against us to doubt our faith in God, that God is both just and merciful, our faith in God that He will deliver the vengeance that we are told is not in our hands. Trust in his plan and not fail. It's not just for the spiritual reasons, but also for the political reasons. Ask yourself. We all recognize this is a watershed moment, but never doing that for us. This is the shock in Iran. Literally. One shot, one kill, an international incident, in a outpouring of both love and affection in the vigils that you see for Charlie Kirk across the country, but also with anger and resentment, hatred, people ridiculing his death, all of these different things. It's important also to understand that politically, it is in crises like these when we become instrumentalized by forces outside of our control. We take our eye off the ball. And I don't want to be too explicit at this moment now, but when we take our eye off the ball because of something so sensational, because of something so emotionally charged, that's why they do these things. That's why supernatural as well as societal forces do these things to them to take advantage of. And people, guided perhaps by good intentions or righteous indignation, become unwitting instruments of forces beyond their control, beyond their understanding. They become pawns in a larger game. And so, in order for us not to be agents of evil, a supernatural evil, a worldly evil, in order for us not to be instrumental. Okay. I have thoughts. And obviously last video I did about the Trump thing. You guys have to make the person. So we proceed out to brand like person out for seconds. So we're still taking it. It's not as the wrong voice. Here the context of to say two for the full seconds. But otherwise it is just like a lot of people see all these things. They get minutes, all just a great total get go get one people have to make it fine. So this is really weird. It's just really like because they think it's like so good sort of bullets again like this to their big chain. So the included just exercising sort of the context it's all people that people so nice. If you go it's actually today in the woods here. Some real cases. Or we could be able to, which is a over is real. So the big is this one's going to be the train stuff. If they say it's some train stuff, it's those employers. Okay. And this not about trains. It was it absolutely. And like it's going to make sense. It's going to be it's really giving all their people say you get sure anybody else guys. So let's say so what is this number shopping was it 8 years basically what we put it so shoot that way there which is it's after this so it's I should all that it's just acts so this is also this is a bit it's too cool it's too full if you're Christian which you got to go on you know it's not that fun somebody did that because you're for a long time so I try to I want to shoot from position. They got to shoot position. They're going to be single there. And the people missing it all because the track cycle also intends to shoot position or shoot from inside. And eventually got to escape. Okay. It's supposed to be one. So they got to see the person. It's not really. They're going to shoot from inside position. They're going to see it. It's supposed to be there instead. That's you got to think. Two. What's the solution? So let's say everything. I'm saying, well, that's your really. This is what I said. Say this. This should be. This is what I said. Okay, good. This is what all you what is. Okay, to find it, the figure thing. especially if it's like short ones. They would not have it. They would have less than 10 seconds on all. It was every day. Any kid, I know it sounds bad for two grade, but any kid, get your point. You go to 80, all two things. You can read all these. And you can either do is probably very close to it. If you got nothing illegally, probably legally, you can anybody can hear. I'm still going to still be clean. When you feel something, maybe offers. Yes, this is that's not that's 60 inches. You know, same with my weight back. I don't know. I don't really there's not another way. I'm sure that's a good. If it is, yeah. I think another photo of your social media where you on something kind of right that's not fair. I think it's pretty good. Yeah. It's a gossip. People from 60 I get this. What is your this story? They go this up. It's just so fucking fun. It's overrated asshole. But you kill someone, they did it illegal. It's that simple. And that's not. To the kind of stay away from is the people's minds in this country are free. Us two guys keep saying over and over again exactly how they should. This is what say it anyway. You can't blame it on this. It's all here. You keep so we'll fix that. It's going to march back as they go. And yeah. But this is one of the most fun assassinations in American history. And then you talk down to so just a fucking great game. Once again, another great game. Anybody's in the worst of positive. Nobody start before it. Yes, he missed these guys. Illegal cheating things you can use in airsoft. Airsoft is the most power. Number one, these A2. They led to a massive controversy because they're basically cheater agents. They can shoot not one. Up to 10 times before can destroy any cheap eye protection in a few shots. Next but not least are these airsoft POV cameras. The reason for that is some people mounted these POV cameras and tried to record themselves in airsoft matches. They're dominating the field, recording these insane moments. They got caught posting very realistic firearm 4K video. Illegal cheating things you can get. This is the greatest anti-aircraft searchlight that was developed by Germany in World War II. Let's see what happens. My blaze just one black water right here. Oh, okay. Let's see what it's 6 minutes, 8 minutes. What's the difference between a doodle and a drawing? I used to think they meant the same thing, but now I don't. Well, my art style doodle because they interpret sense serious. The real difference between a doodle and drawing is nothing to do with that. The process. Drawing doesn't doodle because they
it's going to take. One hand, the noodle is an absent-minded and freeform, but as a drawing, as a goal, and structure. Think about that next time someone teaches you how to do it. We need something other like service. You know, that like things like symmetry. And this simple trick, I'll show you how to fix it. Just for you. To the bottom faces of your soul, shift D to duplicate, and then click separate selection. Your soul object selected, go to the data menu and add 2 shape. This is how workers in China fix a broken underground pipe without turning off the whole water system. First, they place a special cover or plate around the pipe. Then, they pour liquid nitrogen or dry ice into a box that surrounds part of them. The extreme cold freezes the water inside, creating a solid ice block that stops the flow. Once the water is frozen and held in place, the workers can safely cut and repair the pipe. This is how work. I'm going to wear this giant seat and deep embarrassment. I am. We are done. We are all done here. You understand me? We are all done. It is official, guys. It is officially over. I'm gonna put back on this toilet seat. I'm going to the car. I'm wearing 6 months, 5 years if I have to. I'm gonna put it back on. I'm putting it back on. I'm not cleaning for it. This is who I am. I'm putting it back on. Stop. For your family. For your family, put it back on. For your future. For your future. Pay the bills. Pay the bills. You're dead. Just put it on. I gotta put it back on. I gotta put it back on. I'm severely dead. I owe a lot of money. I had to do it. I had to do it. I did what I need to do. I'm going to put back on the toilet seat. I gotta put it back on the toilet seat. I'm putting it back on. I'm putting it back on. Put it back. Put it. Yep. Please look for. This is not who I am. I'm not. I'm not. I'm not this person. I ain't no goody goody. I'm this person. I'm filthy. I am dirty. I had the perfect toilet seat there. And I'm going to put on this toilet seat right here, right now. You understand me? You understand me? My sister. Then I'm going to have to wear. I'm going to have to wear the toilet seat. Where were you yesterday? Where were you yesterday? You didn't watch. You didn't listen. I gotta put it back on. Gotta put it back on now. Mr. Kruger, think of what I did to it. I do it. I couldn't do it. Gotta put it back on. You understand me? You don't need this way on. This is what you want. This is what everyone wants. Gotta put back on the toilet seat. We're not clean anymore. I'm not clean anymore. Poopy toilet seat man. Poopy toilet seat man. I'm gonna put it back on. You think I will? You think I will? I'm gonna wear it. I'm gonna put it on. I'm gonna put it on. You think I won't do it? Huh? You think I'm not gonna do it? I'll do it. I'll do what I have to do. I'll do what I have to do. If it's what I gotta do, then I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do what I gotta do. I'm gonna do what I gotta do. I gotta. I have to. I have to. I got it. I got $5. I couldn't make it yesterday. See my phone. That's right. I got $5. It's on your phone. Got it. Get it Dutch. It's like gravity. Go to your pants. What happens when you don't wear your pants? You get rid of a spaceship, which makes the mental office. It goes through their pants. It's like gravity. Go. With that.
You have African American rappers saying N-word this and N-word that, but a Caucasian can't. So say it. Say what? This guy was challenged to walk around school without moving out the way for anybody, so as a result, he bumps into a bunch of people while they're trying to get to their classes, starting problems with a bunch of angry students. As he kept walking in a straight line and bumping shoulders, he soon met someone else about to give him a lesson on respect. Almost it's the right time. This guy was challenged to walk around the school. A bold strategy, God. Let's see if it pays off for him. A bold strategy, God. Let's see if it pays off for him.
This Lego build uses a genius technique that blew my mind. You may know that if you have 3 sets of Lego train wheels spaced more than 0 studs apart, they are unable to go around Lego track curves. The Orient Express from 2023 solves this problem with a truly incredible technique. On the train's tender, the front and back pair of wheels are fixed in place, whereas the middle one is actually able to slide left and right. This allows it to stay on the tracks the whole time, and you can see this function most clearly when going through a junction. This Lego... In Japan, many households use rain chains instead of traditional downspouts. While they can still face blockages and ice buildup like downspouts, their main appeal is aesthetic. Rain chains add beauty and sound to it.
Dude, I don't usually do this, bro, but I'm gonna be nice to the admins today. I'm not gonna X-ray. Let's go, bro. This is what happens when you don't X-ray, dude. All right, just like the last diamond. Let's go. Hey, bro, now for some strip line action. Yeah, something to be. Oh, my God, a lucky day. Wait, that's not me. This thing way, dude. Let's go down. Oh my God, dude. Wait. Is this normal, bro? The one time I do X-ray, I just like so. It must be my lucky day. Dude, I don't usually do it. This guy, like on a Twitch stream saying it sounded so good. It was like, blew me away.
This video walks you through how wine is made. A device is used to lock clusters of red grapes in place with several components.